Meeting to order. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Those of us here at HQ, go ahead and stand for.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any adjustments for the agenda, or can we go ahead and prove it as it is? All right, Chair, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So do you want to switch Thursday? Ben?
It's been moved by Commissioner Fahrenhoff, seconded by Vice Chair Rowland. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Consent agenda. We have Part A, payroll summary and authorization for March 2023. Part B, payroll summary and authorization for April 2023. C, payroll summary and authorization for May 2023. D, claims vouchers 13705 totaling $9,293.51. Claims vouchers 13706 to 13801 totaling $1,456,166.71. Is there any discussion? It's been moved by Commissioner Teoflack to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Fahrenhoff. Any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, motion carries. On to approval of meeting minutes. We have the April 18th, 2023 regular meeting minutes and the May 2nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Are there any questions, concerns? All right. Chair, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for April 18th and May 2nd. Moved by Commissioner Fahrenhoff, seconded by Commissioner Teoflack. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right. Motion carries. On to public comment. We have two online. Do either of the two online wish to make a public comment? So please raise your hand. All right, we have one in the gallery. Penny, would you like to make any comments? Not tonight? Okay, thank you. On to the chief's report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and meeting attendees. Wanted to let the board know that our meeting to present an update to the city of Linwood, their mayor and city council and staff, that meeting went well last night. Very good questions that were asked by council members and very good dialogue. They're very pleased that their original stakeholder with Fire District 1 in forming the RFA. That's something we haven't done before, is to actually go down to the city of Linwood to present an annual type report. And it's something that I think that they're going to continue to ask for. As we only have one contract city left that requires 2 meetings annually, I think it's something that the RFA needs to continue to do, is to touch base with our electeds on an annual basis and let them know all of the good work that we're doing within the RFA. But just in summary, the meeting went well. I want to thank Chair Daniels for being there, also Vice Chair Rowland, and thank you, Penny, for attending the meeting with myself and Chief Eastman and Communication Director Hines. So thank you for that. If we're looking a little bit more tired than usual on this side of the table for the three of us, it's because we've had all day interviews for future probationary firefighters or firefighter paramedics that want to be recruits in our next academy, which starts September 18th. It's today was all about laterals mostly. So we actually have candidates. I'm pleased to inform the board that we're looking at from the City of Seattle Fire Department, Valley Regional Fire Authority, Renton's Regional Fire Authority. It's pretty intriguing now that it seems that we're in a place where people, even that have 5 or more years on the job, are wanting to come work for South County Fire and that live within our RFA as well. So pretty exciting news for the RFA and pretty exciting news to see where we end up with day 2 of our interviews, which conclude on Thursday. So wanted to let the board know about that. And with that, let's go to the first slide. Chris G. Wanted to share a group photo of our 3-day CERT, and that stands for Community Emergency Response Team course. We had 13 graduates, all from South County area, complete the training over the weekend here at headquarters. Thanks, Chris G. Next slide. 2 pictures here. We have 2 new onboarded employees. The first on the left is Nate Velli. He is a facility specialist and has joined our team. And then we have Mary Miley, who is an HR specialist who's joined our HR team. So we want to welcome both of those employees to our organization. And also, commissioners, I'm pleased to announce that our top candidate for our recruitment for Human Resources Director has accepted their final offer. They'll be onboarding with South County Fire on June 26th. They will be attending the board work section next Tuesday for introductions, as well as the Dish with the Commish function. I'll work with Melissa Blankenship to get over to you resume and cover letter that was provided to us, so you have full information on this excellent candidate that we're looking forward to you meeting in person next week. And with that, I'm going to turn the last portion of my chief's report to Assistant Chief Eastman, who has an update on 3 important items. One is county fireworks legislation. The second is our cost of service model. And then also the dashboard we've been talking about. Bob, you got it?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Just real quick, we've made some good headway with the county. Our first meeting was quite successful. There is legislation that has been drafted, and we found out this morning it's going to the planning committee and go through the county council's process. Staff will continue to follow it and attend meetings as appropriate. But that's further than we've gotten and far quicker than we've gotten in the past. So we're looking forward to see where that goes. And I will tell you, I don't think we're going to meet. We're not going to have any of this happen prior to the 4th. So if the ordinance is successfully approved by the county, it wouldn't take effect till 2025. Cost of service model, I know we've had some conversations about it. Burke and Associates is who developed the first cost of service model that we've had. We have an agreement with Burke to update our cost of service model to make it current. The other thing we're going to do this time is with Jennifer Parte being our data analyst, and she's actually very, very good with models. She's going to, part of this is she will work with Burke as they update it. She's going to do most of the updating with Burke helping her do that. So in the future, we can maintain that cost of service model, make adjustments to it, add cost centers, take away cost centers, look at some variability in that based on how we move forward with it. That work should start in July. I would anticipate, Burke needing a couple months. We probably won't anticipate anything coming back no sooner than September. And we'll continue to update the board on that. But I know that's a topic that we've been talking about. Yes.
The cost of service model, not an expert, but is that just really needed for our work with contracts cities?
No, unfortunately, we've talked about it more in that context. But when the original cost of service model was developed, it was developed for us to, at the time, we were looking at what does it cost to add a resource or add a fire station or add a single resource. And we did it in several different ways from an administrative perspective, right? We would say, well, it's $100,000 for this year because we're doing it halfway through the year. And then the following year was right. We wanted a way to go look and strategically have conversations about increase of resources and what does it actually mean in totality, not just people, but M&O and replacements and all those other pieces. And so the original model was designed for us to use internally. We took that same model and then said, okay, we know the geopolitical boundaries of our contract cities. What resources are they actually using? based on the cost centers that we identified to be able to look at what they're actually using in the response criteria, and then being able to look at that in relation to what the contract was and help inform where we are. But the original design of the model was for us to use internally to help make strategic decisions, help with long-range planning, i.e., new stations, additional resources in whatever capacity to do that. So we've used it for both, but it was primarily designed internally, and we utilized it to help with looking at our contracts and the equitability.
Thank you.
Can add something to it. Not what 90% of our cost is real labor. I think that's critical, and that's why we need to study. I did have some disagreement with how they come up with it. I hope this time I can able to have some discussions on that.
And then the last thing, I know we've been talking about the dashboard a lot, the operational dashboard. We do have, and I'm looking at Chris G to make sure I'm talking in the right context. Is that the dashboard for the commissioners to be able to look at anytime they want, and it's interactive. In its first draft is ready. And I've talked to Jennifer about it. And so the goal is to give each of the commissioners a link, hopefully before the end of the week, for you to be able to go look at our operational dashboard, which and when you go in, you'll look, and at a meeting in the future, probably a work session, bring Jennifer in and then staff, and we can go through kind of what you can do with it, what you can't. So you understand as you manipulate what you're looking at, and then, staff can at that point use the dashboard to talk about what our response times did for 2022, what our turnout times are, and give the staff explanation, with the hope that the board will have a tool to go to on a regular basis whenever they need to look at where we are currently. And you can look at the demographics for today. You can look at the last week. You have lots of flexibility. And obviously for some that aren't familiar with Power BI or using some of those type of dashboards, we'll come back in the future to kind of give you kind of dashboard 101, and then an explanation of what each of those are to go along with that. We'll just do that at a time that meets with all the other work we have going on, and probably during a work session, we'll bring Jennifer in to do that. So that's all I have, Chief.
So what's work session? Can it be next week, or you want to in July, or when do you think?
It probably is not next week, because I know next week is quite full. And so I'm hoping we'll work with Chair Daniels to get it on an agenda that we can give it its due diligence and not rush through it. I know the work session next week is full of, and I can't remember exactly what it is. That was a couple of days ago we talked about it, but I know there's several things on it now, Commissioner Chan. So the goal would be to get it in.
Can you get it at least on July?
We'll work with the chair to make.
Let the board decide. I'm not just one person decided, but I think that's critical to me, that information, especially I want to know how much we give into other one, that is a very critical, but also on the capital facility plan. I think that is critical for us, at least for me, to vote on anything.
Yeah, I think staff we've got the dashboard, it's ready to go. It can get something that you guys can look at now. And then we'll do the stuff we normally do.
Yes.
And the hope is that if we do this, you guys will have that right at your fingertips whenever you need it, is ultimately the goal, and then make enhancement to it as we go. So.
Right, but that's more important, a discussion, because the budget's coming up. That is critical to me. Yeah.
And with that concludes Fire Chief report to this evening. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a question, sir.
Go ahead, Commissioner Chan.
You have we in the process hiring the director yet? I know on the April 18, I think Commissioner Kenny asking that question.
We have a final offer that's been extended to the final candidate. We'll be bringing them in to dish with the commission next week and have an opportunity to work with the board chair to also have an opportunity to meet with the commission, because not everybody can make dish with the commission as well.
Okay, because you're hiring all these people underneath that person. I'm just curious.
Yeah, and that's, part of the conversation that we've had with candidates is, about what we need to do is fill our spots that are allotted in the budget and make sure HR has continued to have functionality during this time frame.
So are we able to say goodbye to Albright, the consulting firm?
I could ask that question and see if, when the timing's right for that. Yeah, they've
Right.
been a valued team member. They, just as a reminder, they will be with us still for consulting services. We have what's called their gold membership. So we still have the ability, if we need them, to reach back out, plus their legal services. But let me inquire about that and see if maybe that's part of this, but not
Right.
necessarily for next Tuesday.
Okay,
Mhm.
but we all know that, right? They've been paying them pretty high.
Yep.
High cost for consulting.
Understood.
Like to see our own independent HR department being established.
Yes,
That's a good job getting.
Thank
through
you.
that.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chief, for your report.
Thank you.
On to our legal report with Richard Davis.
Good evening, Commissioners. Over the course of the last month, we have worked on some OPMA, Open Public Meetings Act, and public records issues, and provided advice to staff on both of those. We've been involved with contract drafting and revision of contracts, some HIPAA issues, and worked on coordinating a mediation, an upcoming mediation for the department. One of the things I wanted to mention in terms of a legal update is kind of significant changes to the public works statutes that were adopted by the legislature and will take effect in either this year or next year. And just a couple of changes, I'll just give a real high level overview, but the first one is kind of a significant change. It was under House Bill 1050. And beginning next year, July 1, 2024, local governments will be required to utilize apprentices on public works projects that are $2 million or greater in cost. And every year thereafter, that dollar amount comes down. So in 2020, well, actually every 2 years. So in 2026, it'll be $1.5 million, and in 2028, it'll be $1 million. And the apprentice utilization requirements are that you have to utilize 15% of all labor hours on a project have to be performed by apprentices. So it's kind of a major change. And there's reporting requirements to L&I. There's going to need to be, in addition to public works specifications. And because of this kind of big change, the legislature has required both L&I and MRSC to provide training, information, technical assistance to local governments. That'll include such things as, discussing your reporting requirements, contract administration, sample contract language, and the like. So that will roll out over the course of the next year, take effect on July 1 of 2024. The other thing that was adopted by the legislature this past session deals with the small works roster. And the small works roster is it's kind of when projects are smaller in nature, you don't have to go out to a formal sealed bid process. You can use the small works roster instead. And it's a much more informal process, and it kind of expedites your bidding process. The dollar threshold on that has been $300,000. That's gone up to $350,000. And one of the more important parts of the process is that there's now a goal of having more projects awarded to small businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses. So there's a number of procedures that have been put into the statute to ensure that there are more projects awarded to those business enterprises. And you will need to local governments will be required to again report on the contracts that they are awarding. There will be processes in place so that you can't just repeatedly use the same contractor, and other provisions that have gone in to ensure really that jobs are distributed to some of these minority and other kinds of business enterprises. So again, another big change, and that takes place effective July 1, 2024. But the threshold that increases to 350 will take place July 1 of this year. So I'll be working with, I'll be in touch with Shane Jensen and staff to work on revising our policies, which will need to be updated in order to reflect these changes in the law. Just wanted to let you know that you will see some changes in the future regarding that. And that's all I have for tonight. Now, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions? All right, you got a flight tonight. Thank you again.
Thank you.
On to the union report with VP Armstrong.
Good evening, staff. Good evening, commissioners. Hope everyone's doing well. I've just got a couple things tonight. Just a reminder, Local 1828 will be participating in the Linwood Rotary Boxcar Derby. I don't have those dates, but if you would like them, we can get you in touch with firefighter paramedic Alan Rivas, who is coordinating that for us. Also, last month, we sent 10 members to the Washington State Council of Firefighters Young Members Conference, which basically educates them on the state council, its history, its impact on labor in the state of Washington, and then gives them an overview of how things work and working with not only within their own local, but with elected officials. We have DC bargaining next week, and the Pride stickers have been, IFF Pride stickers have been distributed through the stations and are on the rigs, which do get removed at the end of this month after we've celebrated Pride Month. Our benevolent fund is raising money for a Bothell firefighter who was diagnosed with mesothelioma. And it's also raising money for one of our own members, firefighter and now paramedic, or soon to be paramedic, Ivan. He's had a cousin who had a fire at his cousin's house, and they sounds like lost the house. So we're raising some money for them as well. That's all I have for tonight's report. I'm willing to field any questions you might have.
Thank you, VP Armstrong. Any questions? All right, you got a flight too. Thanks again.
All right, good evening.
On to unfinished business. Item A is the voucher signature resolution for discussion. This is gonna retroactive to March 20th, 2020, when the digital signatures were approved. And then this is just to allow the chair to sign on behalf of the board the approved voucher approval form. An example of this can be seen on page 19 of the packet. It has multiple lines for all the commissioners, and this would allow just for one line for this to the chair. So that way the executive assistant doesn't have to try and collect signatures from everybody. So is there any further discussion? Questions, concerns? Okay. There's no action on this one tonight, so it was just for discussion only. So just wanted to confirm we don't have any. So next time it gets read would be in 2 weeks for action to be taken. So, all right. Easy enough. On to Sound Transit funding agreement and budget amendment for action with DC Wells.
Commissioners, staff and guests, good evening. I'd like to present and walk you through briefly tonight the funding agreement from Sound Transit, and then answer any questions that you may have. As you know, I've been in front of you a few different times giving you updates on Sound Transit. This agreement is designed really to offset expenses from training and equipment only. You can, just for your reference, you can find the agreement on page 74 in your packet. I'm going to jump, however, to page 77, just because it's a summary of the expenses I'm going to begin with training, and I'm just going to briefly walk through each line item for you. Interrupt me if you have any questions about any of them. The first line is addressing overall training for all operations staff. So all uniformed personnel are going to be given familiarization with the light rail vehicles, the stations, track safety, how to operate around them, how to extricate folks from them. The next item on there we've actually begun, and that's the training for our rescue tech personnel. We've already been to Seattle to the operations and maintenance facility. We're beginning the orientation, and then in the month of June, we're going to be doing the lift training. I think I described that in one of my updates to you, where we actually lift the train to get someone if they were to be struck by the train and be trapped underneath the train. So that training has already begun for our tech rescue team. And the last item that Sound Transit is proposing to fund is difficult access drills. And as you know, the guideways all are elevated, and there are access doors along the guideways. And if we have an emergency in between stations, in the train is stuck somewhere in the middle, we may need to access from down below. And some of those access doors are kind of tricky to get the ladder truck into. So we're going to do some training with the ladder truck and our tech rescue team to make sure that we can access all of those doors. And I will say that the new TDA that we have purchased in the last year will make this quite easier as far as accessing, just because the maneuverability of the TDA is improved quite a bit. So that was on page 77. Page 78, Exhibit B is the tools and equipment section. The top item there is Sound Transit has agreed to cost share the fund of a heavy rescue for us. Cost share, yeah, they're not going to pay for all of it, but they're going to give us $250,000 towards the purchase of a new apparatus. Not only is this a regional apparatus and it responds all over Snohomish County and King County, but it's maxed out as far as equipment and weight goes. And so we're going to need to purchase a new one in the next year or so anyway. And so, Sound Transit really isn't in the business of giving apparatus out. And so this was a line item that I wasn't sure that they were going to go for. And we explained the reason why we wanted this money. And after some period of time, they agreed to give us that money. So it's $250,000 towards the purchase of a new heavy rescue. The next item is the heavy lift jacks. This is the equipment we're using in the month of June when we lift the train. Hamatro extrication tools. They've agreed to purchase 3 sets of tools for us. We've asked for the lightest battery operated tools that we can get and purchase, because we potentially would be bringing them up a ladder to the elevated guideways. So we really want the lightest tools we can have if we ever had a derailment and we had to extricate people from the train. The Turfer is just an extrication tool that is designed, or it's a tool designed for lateral stabilization of a heavy load. So during the lift evolution, sometimes you need to stabilize the load from moving laterally. That's a special tool. It's $5,000. We only have one of them. We need 2. And then the final item is these fall arrest kits. They're designed if we ever had to evacuate the train and we had to bring all of the civilians down an aerial ladder. It's very difficult to belay civilians down a ladder. And so this will allow us to basically we put this on them and they can self-belay down a rope. It's just a camming device where they can move slowly down a rope. Ideally, we don't want to do that. We would prefer to remove patients towards a station, but we have to be prepared to remove civilians down a ladder in worst case scenario. And so this will allow us to do that very efficiently. So the summary of all of this is found on page 79, Exhibit C. You can see subtotal for training expenses at $179,280. Subtotal for equipment is $422,295 for a total of $601,575. I would like to point out one thing, if I may. Our agenda bill did have one number transposed on it. So if you look at the agenda bill under the fiscal impact statement, the number was transposed on the funding for the training. It said 179,820, and it should have read $179,280, which is correct in Exhibit C. So I just wanted to point that out for transparency. So that was an error on our part, and I apologize for that. So staff has two recommendations for you tonight. Number one would be to approve the funding agreement between Sound Transit and South County Fire. And our second recommendation would be to approve the budget amendment resolution that is also found in your packet to receive the money from Sound Transit. And so with that, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. It looks really good. My only question, and this comes back to when I was dealing with federal funding, is there, I take it this is a federal funding source that is channeled through transit folks, or is it just from the South?
It is just from Sound Transit.
Okay. And the only reason, the question I had was there any level of performance demonstration we had to do that was tied to this money?
There is not.
There isn't.
No.
Very good. Awesome.
Any other? Commissioner Chan and then Vice Chair
Yeah, I
Rowland.
have a question. 601,575 is a one-time expense, one time that they're reimbursing us.
Yes, they are reversing it. Yes, one time.
Okay, so what happened to continue annually? That type of thing, and then when we have new firefighter, I know that you said that. Like back in page 77.
So that's a great question. And we did bring that up when we initially entered into negotiations with Sound Transit. That was something that I did ask for, some ongoing training. They do not do any funding for ongoing training. So it's not what they do. So they want to give us money and then be out of the business of reimbursing us for funds. I wanted to get 3 to 5 years, but they didn't want to do that.
We also require annually to something.
So what we're going to do is some of the initial training in Exhibit A for our operations personnel is going to be what we call train the trainer, where our subject matter experts are going to be our rescue technicians, and they're going to be trained to a much higher level. And in the future, they're going to be our trainers for our incoming probationary folks. And they're also going to do our continuing education, our annual training, refresher training, that kind of thing. So Sound Transit will make some of their light rail vehicles available to us. We might be able to go down to the operations and maintenance facility with new employees, for example, for 3 to 4 hours and walk them through that. That will just be part of the training that I do with them during the pre-academy or post-academy time. They're not going to reimburse us for those 4 hours of time for the recruits. So
Thank you.
Well, that's pretty strange to me because the annual training, but also now on the one on page 7777, all this number I all included into the $601,575. Is that what?
the Exhibit A,
Right.
yeah, those 3 line items are included in the total of the 601,000, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Because if I divide up very quickly, the first one is 321 uniform personnel for 4 hours training. They come out of $89 per hour. And with compensation, I'm not that even equally compensating us, but how does that compare with other areas that they've done, like in Seattle and other shoreline? How does that compare?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the number? How do you compare to them?
So it's hard to it's not typically apples to apples because everyone has different target hazards in their area.
Right.
For example, I sat down with Bellevue and I went through their proposal. And ours is very similar to theirs. However, they have different target hazards. They have Exactly. Tunnels require special equipment and it's very, very expensive. So Seattle, Bellevue each have tunnels. They require special breathing apparatus. They require special training, special vehicles, which really, really raises the price on what Sound Transit has to pay. We don't have any of that. Quite frankly, we don't even have any at grade crossings. So the likelihood of a light rail vehicle striking a car is zero because there won't be any cars on our elevated guideways. So we don't have the same target hazards that they do. We did address all of the same things that Seattle, Bellevue, and Shoreline. I've been working with Shoreline quite a bit. We all address the same things: confined space, if you have them, orientation, tech rescue, suppression. All of that is addressed in this training number.
Well, heaven forbid that will be a big disaster. Are we able to help the other area, or the other area can come over to help us?
Yes, we have mutual aid agreements with all of our neighbors. And in fact, we are intentionally training with Shoreline personnel and North Shore personnel because we want to make sure we have that interoperability of our agencies.
Right,
We all purchase the same equipment.
right.
So when we show up on the same, on a scene together, all of our equipment will work together. So, yep.
Okay.
Does that
well,
answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does,
Okay.
but now we might have to rely on the Linwood people on board those of the Sound Transit. I mean, still continue to see if we can work out the annual training. I think that's important, right? We cannot just do it 1 year and then never train again, right?
Yeah, and in the training division, we address all kinds of things within our jurisdiction, whether it's ferries or the freeway or now light rail.
Right.
These are all things that we train our new people on.
Right, but this is especially for light
Yep.
rail, not our regular
Correct.
practice, so that's
Correct.
different. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thank you very
Yep.
much.
Vice Chair Rowland and then Commissioner Lawrence.
Talk to me a little bit about this heavy rescue apparatus. We already
Yep.
have one currently. What's its kind of life
It's
expectancy? Is it something that we're looking to
it's nearing the end. And one of the issues we're having is that we keep purchasing more equipment to do more things. And the scope of what the rescue technicians are now asked to do has increased to the point where we're running out of space on that apparatus. And not only are we running out of space, but it's a single rear axle. So we're maxed out on the weight.
Mhm.
And so when I proposed this to Sound Transit, I said, we have to put all of this new equipment on to address and mitigate emergencies, with your equipment. And I have no space on our apparatus. So it really is going to force us at some point in the very near future, probably next year, to start speccing and purchasing a new heavy rescue. And it's just going to need to be a little bit bigger, probably a dual axle in the rear to carry more weight. So
expected the life expectancy of the current unit is what?
it's
5
nearing
years, or-
nearing the end, I believe. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's 2024. So it's due to be replaced next year anyway.
Next year, correct.
Next year anyway.
And if it was replaced with an equivalent sized unit, single axle, what's the standard cost of one of those compared to this 1.25 for the heavier version?
Ballpark, it's about $1 million. So it's about another 250,000 to get the larger apparatus.
Equivalent or effectively, they are paying for the upgrade, and we're just applying it to an already scheduled.
That's one way to look at it, correct?
Thank you.
Yep. Commissioner Fairnow, or Lawrence, sorry.
Yeah, I'm Chief Wells. We've probably been through this type of scenario throughout the history of the fire service, right? Where society builds certain infrastructure in our area, and then we have to figure out how to respond to it, take care of, deal with emergencies on the new types of infrastructure, like high-rise buildings, bus depots. Can you give me an historical overview of how this works out? Because it sounds like they're gonna cover our initial costs, but then we're stuck with the training afterwards. Is this kind of par for the course all the time? I mean, since our citizens, in their collective wisdom voted the Sound Transit money to be wasted. So now we have to waste more money taking care of it. So I guess as citizens, we need to pay for it. Am I making any sense?
Well, I do think that this is a fairly common thing where agencies like Sound Transit train you up to the initial standard, and then the ongoing training is up to the organization, whether it's aircraft or you know, the ferry system or now light rail. This is not unique to Sound Transit, is what I would say.
Okay, so then I shouldn't get my knickers in a twist about them not continuing to pay for our training then.
I would say no.
Thank you. My knickers are getting kind of tight these days, hard to twist them.
All right, Commissioner Farnoff, you had a question?
Just a question and a comment. This is a regional capability, right? So whether
Our rescue.
and
It
so
is.
whether Sound Transit put a train in our backyard or not, we still have to replace the apparatus. What comes to our aid here is, even though we're going to do a little bit more training, which is not really any skin off of our nose, we do get a financial bump that will help us acquire that apparatus, and we choose to keep them both in service for a little while until we get to the end of life. We could do that, or we could just flat out swap it out. So it doesn't sound like there's any negative side to this.
It's all upside.
Yeah. So
All of it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rowland.
One last question. For these other pieces of equipment on here, the Homotro extrication tools, that 50-ton lifting jack, all
Yep.
that stuff. What's just kind of lifespan of that kind of equipment? Is it like a 10-year, 5-year lifespan, something like that, where every 10 years we're gonna find new stuff?
I would have to research the extrication tools. The lifting jacks didn't come. We just got them. We're just putting them in service now. There was no lifespan on them. I'd have to look.
Yeah, my only thought was that sometimes jacks and other electric stuff, the more you use it, obviously, the more it wears out, and you have to make sure that it can't fail, right?
Mhm.
Your jack drop when you're underneath the car, so just wanted to understand that from the first point, but at least those extracted. What exactly are those? Those like I don't want to say the jaws of life, because I know that that's not the business actually.
The extrication tools or the lifting jacks.
The extrication tool.
They're pretty standard. We carry them on a lot of our apparatus. These I really wanted to ask for from Sound Transit because I wanted the lightest, newest yes. So, you know, designed to make it as easy as possible for our firefighters to carry them up an aerial ladder. Yep.
Yeah.
That's actually, they look like that.
They look like that. Yeah, spreaders, cutters, a ram, a telescoping ram.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And the choice to go with the lighter, and as far as performance and stuff like that,
They'll be the highest performance. Yep.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kinney first, and then we'll go back to Commissioner Chan.
Thank you. The cost and covering the cost is a little bit depends on how you look at it, because Sound Transit brings a liability to us, a need to have ongoing training, a need to replace that heavy rescue unit in 20 years, a need to replace the equipment whenever its effective life ends, and that'll be on our dime. But on the other hand, Sound Transit, through the increase in density and the buildings that I think you're already seeing going in Linwood, and will go in more because of the transit center at the Linwood Transit Center, and then as you see in our jurisdiction here at 128th, when if it eventually goes to Everett, and that transit center is built up, I think you're going to see a lot more density, apartment buildings. We just on the dollars, we generate more money off of our property taxes based on the increased value of these buildings and the increased density. And so in some ways that is helping to pay for Sound Transit. At least that's one way to look at it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenny. I agree with you what you just said. Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, actually, I'm more agreeing with Mark Lawrence. Because everyone in here paid the Sound Transit tax, which is pretty heavy. Okay, so in the sense that the difference is that when Seattle negotiate, the city, they probably have some impact fees, whatever, because they build the stations and everything else. I assume that Linwood probably have some kind of, they have to build a garage and all that stuff, impact fee. The difference is that we're not associated, so we need to work with the Linwood, whoever, or the Monarch Terrace, the people on the Sound Transit board to able to see the difficulty we have. But I'm on the other way, yes, we have increasing the population, but our liability also now we're all the high tower rescues and all that stuff. It is come with a cost too. And that's why we have capital facility plan to fill in that. So I'm not sure we're really advantage of that. So, but anyway, we still need to continue because they collect all money and they decide where to spend. I think we should have more impact on that. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Sound Transit board members include Executive Summers as well as
Right.
Mayor Franklin out of Everett and Mayor.
Yeah, but they're
Frizzell
not
out of
part of
Linwood.
us. That's a different, when Seattle mayor on the board, the fire department, they're all representing all the country, but we're not being represented. I'm not sure Summer, we're looking after our benefit. Right, that's why we need to encouraging,
Yeah.
continue.
I think
let them
we're
know.
the third member that you were going to mention was Mayor Christine Frizzell from Linwood is on the Sound Transit
Right.
Board and
She owns that.
Chief Wells and I met with her before, as you know, but we started negotiations with Sound Transit just to let her know about what our needs were going to be and what our asks were. And she was part of that affirmative vote to get
Right.
this
No,
passed
she
at
did
their
aware
board
that,
level.
yeah, our interest is
She's
in
our
there. Yeah.
person.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rowland?
I just wanted to say, I think with not to belabor the point, you get into all the taxes and all the growth and everything like that, but our benefit charge is the kind of the tool that we can use, when it comes to the increased density of the larger buildings, things like that. So I think at the end of the day, we have the tools at our disposal to be able to handle this growth. And the fact that Sound Transit is, able to and willing to assist on at least these issues is something that we can appreciate and will use. Thank you. I believe with this one, you were looking for action tonight.
Yeah,
So I
there's-
would make a motion to, do we have to do these two separately or can we?
I believe we have to do them separately.
Let's start with, I move that we approve the funding agreement for South County Fire Training and Supplies.
Can I make a friendly amendment
Yes.
to the funding agreement between South Transit and South County Fire in the amount of $601,575.
That works, whatever this is. Yes.
All right. So moved by Vice Chair Rowland and seconded by Commissioner Tealflack. Do we have any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right. 1 nay, motion carries. The second part, the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the budget amendment resolution 06062023-18.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Rowland, seconded by Commissioner Farnahoff. Any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. 1 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
On to part C, contract for the purchase of medical apparatus for action with DC Curtis and AC Eastman and purchasing manager. Oh, there he is, Shane. Jensen, there he is. And go ahead and take it away.
So James, I'm going to let you take the lead and just for the board. This is very similar to what we did last time with the engine. Is some of these, we don't have everything rock solid yet. But because of supply chain issues, we're asking for permission before we have potentially everything and all the dotted lines done as a result of where we're going with supply chain issues. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Chief Curtis, who can give you the update, and we have Shane on that can provide any other additional details as we go. James.
Good evening, board chair, board guests, and staff. I'm here this evening with 3 agenda bills to ask for your consideration, as we have three agenda bills for item 10C Charlie, 10D, and 10E. If I could direct your attention to page 93 of your packet. This is where we're going to ask for your consideration for the purchase approval of the contract to purchase 2 additional Ford 4-wheel drive medic units. This is a little bit out of order, and I'll give you the history behind that. Is originally earlier in the year under Chief Isatelo's great work and direction, we were trying to purchase some 4-wheel drive medic units that were in the 2023 approved budget. Unfortunately, due to supply chain issues, those chassis were back ordered and not available. So that caused staff at the time to pivot and reconsider a different chassis, and the decision was approved by you to move forward with 2 medic units based on van chassis. Since then, a 500-day wait time has actually, we didn't realize the 500-day wait time. I want to say it was probably about 150 days. The manufacturer changed their allotment for the medic unit builder, Braun Northwest, and these chassis became available on very short notice. So what we're asking for your consideration is we have these chassis, and we're a little bit afraid that if we don't act on them, we will lose them, and then we'll be right back into a 500-day waiting period. So these are vehicles that were identified as remounts for 2024. It would be in the 2024 budget request in a dollar amount of $634,110. These have now become new builds, and what we want to do as staff is push the remounts, the refurbishments and remounts down the road for another year. Instead, take advantage of these chassis that were not available, that are available now, and ask for your consideration. And that's an additional $259,710 identified in the agenda bill. So with that, I pause and ask if you have any questions.
Vice Chair Rowland.
So we have 2 units right now that we were going to have rebuilt.
Yep.
And then we're going to purchase 2 new ones because there was going to be that way, correct?
Yes, and that's correct. Typically, to get into a little more detail, ordinarily, our medic units are van chassis, and it's not a problem to remount a van chassis box onto a van chassis. However, we were going to buy these vehicles early on in the year, not available, and now we've got these chassis, and a remount is really difficult with a truck chassis, 4-wheel drive truck chassis, and a van box that was going to remount. So the decision amongst the team was to request a new build and then defer the remounts for 2024 to a later day.
What's
Does that
the
answer your question, sir?
I guess my question is, or I guess follow-up question then would be, I'm not suggesting, but what would be the disadvantage of just going ahead with the rebuilds and getting these 2 new ones so that we have 4 new, everything's good and we don't have to stagger them out?
We don't have any issues with that. We weren't prepared to come to you and ask for that dollar amount. We wanted to take small steps and come into the process without asking for too much.
So I will add, part of it is that the chassis and the 2 4-wheel drive rigs that James is talking about was really slated to be done in 2024. So we had dollars set aside for 2023, dollars set aside for 2024 to stay within what CFO Bothwell did for money flow issues, to do and move the 2024 4-wheel drive chassis up, which we did this a while ago then there were new rigs into the fleet, and then move the remounts to 2024 as a result of how we've been budgeting and how we've been strategically looking for a replacement schedule over time. Is I wasn't in the meeting, but my assumption is that's kind of how they went, is they wanted to flip flop as a
all
result
that
of
is.
we could get these chassis now and not wait 500 days. And then get these in play, put them in, and then move forward with your remounts in 2024, just like we always had planned, and continue the replacement schedule as we had planned it and as it continues to roll. So
Is there any risk, but I mean, if these things were slated to be rebuilt or remounted this year, is there any downside to waiting that extra year?
So I'm going to defer to James on that, because I would assume that that was part of their decision. If the team felt that those rigs weren't able to be deferred, they would have come to you with a different proposal. Is that a fair statement, James?
Yes, sir. And that is fair. And to the credit of the team that's managing the medic unit, aid unit fleet, we're very forward leaning with that. And we've been able to anticipate some of these things with fleet management through rotations. So the anticipation is that some of these units that we are identifying as remounts could go into the reserve fleet and then be replaced with brand new medic units. So basically, we're just doing a fleet management, and our medic unit fleet is so large that we have that capability to adjust and pivot per se.
You bet. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yes, this is getting into the weeds, which I don't think us commissioners get too far into the weeds with this kind of stuff, but I'm interested in trucks. I like motors and stuff. So you made a comment about the rebuilding those, and that it's kind of tough, hard to do. Is that cost effective versus buying new ones, or can we just sell those on the market and just buy all the new ones we need since we got the opportunity?
The answer to your question as best as I can, Commissioner, is it is a cost-effective approach. I don't have the exact dollar amounts in front of me, but I want to say it's about 70% of the cost. Chief Isotile, does that sound about right? Yeah, it's about 70% of the cost. And we're able to get approximately 14 or 15 years out of a box, the medic unit module itself. And then just replace the chassis itself. And that is absolutely cost effective for South County Fire, and very common in the Western Washington region with this particular builder that we work with.
Yeah, well, you got my support, whatever you want to do, especially buying the new stuff, because it came available. So very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Fernhoff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a real quick question. You specified 4x4. Is that a standard throughout the fleet, or are these unique?
Sir, these are going to be unique in the event of disaster response, emergency management, as you can appreciate, more in particular for snowstorms, any high water events. And we want to have the capability to provide that service for our citizens and our customers. Right now, we don't have that capability, and we're using staff vehicles to mitigate that if we do encounter a situation such as a snowstorm. So this is a request that was brought forward by the EMS division, I want to say a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so just 2 years ago, when we did the big update to the our medic units and our aid car, we right-sized that 2 years ago, Jason, correct? 2 years ago.
Correct.
And added this resource at that time when we updated the replacement schedule to give us winter weather capability that we didn't have. And that was part of a plan that we started 2 years ago. And as a result of the pandemic, we weren't able to move forward on four-wheel drive chassis because we couldn't get them. And so we pivoted, and Chief Isotile pivoted, and we bought normal van chassis, and now we're at the point to finish kind of what we started a couple of years ago to give us a capability as we tend to get more snow and have longer days or longer timeframes of, you can't get engines down, you can't get traditional medic units down, to ensure that we can actually at least strategically get resources where we need to have the capability to do that.
Yeah, thank you both for that, because I as soon as I saw 4x4, that was the first thing that came to mind. Most of my ambulance experience has all been 2x4, And having 4x4 capability, I really would stress to the board, the other board members, that this is important. This needs to be in the fleet if we don't already have it, and adding it, just as you say, for contingencies is really going to be important. So I'm all in favor for this kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Can I add one more thing to that? Depending on what Ford does with the E-Series and the vans, this may be the new normal. They may all start to come as four-wheel drive. So it's up to Ford.
Thank you. That was one thing that a comment that I'd heard was that this was likely going to be the new process going forward. So thank you for restating that. Commissioner Chan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is a characteristic of me to kind of give you more money. I assume that I'm the only one in this room riding on the ambulance. And it was really, it's a truck. Okay. And then it's not funny when you just hit by a car from behind and all your muscles are all tight and everything else. And I feel every single rock on that place. I know that there's an air called air shock or whatever it is that.
Well, MSO East would be nudging me right now and say, ask for the suspension upgrade.
Yes.
But it's already in there, and
It's already in there.
Yeah, it's part of the truck chassis.
Right.
For what you stated.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you're a patient, it's really, you feel everything. And then when you look up there, it's all white. And then the paramedic keep on asking you every 5 seconds, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I want to improve the customer experience. I mean, I was even say, hey, get some, a mountain or something in there is anyway, and then have some soft music.
Oh.
And no, I mean, it's not as much money, but it does change the experience.
Well,
So,
we'll absolutely bring those into consideration. So
yeah, I would ask the staff and then anyone say, hey, these people are really, in touch with us. Any one of you don't believe it, write it on one and then you feel it. Okay. All right. Thank you. It's already in there. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, next time Commissioner Chan gets hit by a car, you guys pick him up, just give him some happy gas or something.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Any further discussion on this agenda item 10C? All right, Vice Chair Rowland.
I'm gonna move that we approve this, the purchase of two 2023 Northwest Star Ford F-450 4x4 171-1 medic units.
Friendly amendment to include for the amount of $634,110.
That whatever it costs, that's what I'm recommending right here. Yep.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Rowland, seconded by Commissioner Tealflack. Any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, motion carries.
thank you, board. And next item on the agenda bills is item D on page 96 of your packet, and that goes from 96 to page 114. This is a request for pre-authorization to sign two contracts for apparatus refurbishment. This is in response to the 2023 budgeted amount of $1 million for refurbishment of two pumpers, which staff has gone out and identified as two Spartan H&W pumpers, and the agenda bill reflects that. And at the time of the creation of this, we did not have both proposals as we do now, and they're both pretty much in the same price range as you see in your packet. One's at $427,715, and the other one that I just received minutes before the commissioner meeting was $454,979. Those are two uniquely different vehicles, and they are within budget and as we expected as staff. And to add to that, if I may, we just received the first of those refurbishments. Well, actually, we haven't received it back. It'll be back on Wednesday. We were down in Henderson, Nevada, inspecting it, and it exceeded our expectations. We're very happy with the process that the previous staff prior to my arrival in logistics chose and worked with those members down there, and they did an excellent job. So with that, I would pause for any questions or comments.
So the apparatus has come back. Where is it parked currently?
So it will be back on Wednesday. I'm sorry if I misspoke. That one will be back. It's going to be low Boyd Monday morning and should be here Wednesday afternoon. We can coordinate something after the meeting, but it will be at the Linwood shops.
Okay, the
Under
maintenance
Fleet
shop.
Manager Lauren
Okay.
Mangiano.
We said it exceeded your expectations, so that piqued my
Absolutely.
curiosity.
It looks like a brand new engine for a rig that's 2006. It acts and looks and performs just like a brand new engine.
She took it for a spin while you were down there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I did not drive. Those days are behind me, but I had two captains with me and they were absolutely impressed, as was Lauren Mangiano.
Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Chair Rowland?
Well, when would you actually go ahead and sign this and get it all done? Are you planning to kind of wait to get the truck back so you can kind of give it a really good once over to make sure that we're completely happy with it on, in hand?
Yeah, there is a warranty period that starts when we accept it at the Linwood shop. At this point, we are pushed against some of the same considerations when we talked about medic units, and we're going to talk about staff vehicles here shortly, is supply chain shortages. So we were able to negotiate a gentleman's agreement with the manufacturer down in Henderson that following a board action, if we can get purchasing and everybody on board and coordinated, we would be able to get the first of these two trucks into production in October with delivery hopefully in March. So we're trying to stay in line with a short turnaround time. We are satisfied with what we saw down there. We are, I took a team down there that touched the operational side, the design side, and what I call the dirty side of the fire engine, the mechanical side, transmission, motor, pump, and all that stuff. And it met all of our expectations. So I would say if we can move this forward with your approval, we would pull the trigger this week.
So definitely another time sensitive item.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead. Fair enough.
Yeah, it just looks like you have testimonials in here already that the service that we're using, Fire Trucks Unlimited, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like from what I read, everybody seems to be really happy. You're happy with it. Is there anything that we're not knowing about, like downside to this? Because it sounds really good.
It's really good. And we have a really good relationship with the team down there. They're very responsive. They're very eager to help us with our situation. They understand our situation with fleet and they're doing what they can to help us get into a production line.
And I assume this is Lauren reviewed and Lauren approved. So good enough for me. Thank you.
Yes. And just put this in perspective, as we were down there, as we were leaving, two tow trucks were showing up with two of Clark County, Nevada, and everybody knows that Clark County is one of the busier departments around, and they provide service to the Metro Las Vegas Strip area, and they use this company extensively.
Bright yellow, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
It's like the old Linwood days. They had bright yellow trucks. Is that right?
District 11, yeah, bright yellow for Linwood and then kind of a green for District 11. Yep. Bob said, don't bring that up.
One of the advantages we have here is that we don't use salt on the roads and things that can corrode at the actual, parts that you can't fix. So we have the luxury of being able to refurbish these, whereas back home in the Midwest, growing up, you had a lifespan.
And you bring up a very valid point, Commissioner Rowland, is these vehicles are stripped down all the way down to the frame rails. And everything is inspected, everything is taken apart, very meticulous operation. And the motors rebuilt, the pumps rebuilt, the transmissions overhauled, everything that you would ask them to do, they perform for us.
Sounds like a fun job.
I'm surprised they're not busier. I'm surprised it's not a 2-year wait.
Here's the best part is you authorized last meeting for us to anticipate a $1.1 million for a brand new pumper. And we're getting 2 pumpers refurbished for basically the price of a pumper. So there, and the team that went down, including Lauren, I guess I'll be fair to say they were skeptical when they went down, right? They were, and I think they came back. And I'm not saying they went down there with a preconceived notion in their head, but I know one of them did. And they came back when they actually looked at the product, and were, when I say more than satisfied, they really were, and they were shocked. So we sent the right people to take a look, and to be honest, if it wasn't, if the result wasn't what it was, you wouldn't have these 2 refurbishing coming before you to go back and do that again. So the team that went down really did that. And at the end of the day, when fire engines right now are between 1.1 and $1.2 million, having a refurb engine for 500,000 in the current environment we're in, sending it in October, potentially getting back by March, when our current engine that we ordered last year is not even set to get pre-built on it till later this year, with a return date late 23, early 24. It's a great alternative. And I think James, he didn't say this, but with Clark County sending engines to get refurbished on a regular basis, I would assume that there's going to be further conversation about what does that really mean, and are there other opportunities, because engines are really expensive. And what does that mean for our future? And the team will continue to look at that, and make sure we do what's right on behalf of the taxpayers, and ensure that we're spending the dollars that we have efficiently. And I would expect to have further conversation about this in the future.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Fernhoff.
Approve. 1 second.
All right, so Commissioner Fernhoff has made a motion to approve the signing of the contract for 2 pumper refurbishments for the amount of up to $1 million. And was that a second, Vice Chair Rowland?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you. And one last item on the list of agenda bills is for your consideration as we look at item E on the agenda, which is page 115 of your packet. So this is once again a request for your consideration and approval for pre-authorization, in a sense, to look at our staff vehicles and give us the ability to sign a purchase agreement, or I should say, go out and purchase through the state procurement process, and or cooperative purchase such as Sourcewell or HGAC, up to 5 Ford F-150 trucks and 5 Ford Interceptor police vehicles, which are typical SUVs, typically driven by the chief officers, and 1 battalion chief vehicle, which is yet to be determined as the battalion chief team evaluates which is the best vehicle for their application. So with that, I would pause and ask if you have any questions.
So this is being brought before the board, even though it's been approved in the budget process, because it exceeds the $75,000 limit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Fernhoff.
The 5 Ford F-150 trucks, what's their role?
So we've identified these vehicles in the replacement schedule as deputy fire marshal vehicles and training pickup trucks. And they're identified right now as typical Ford F-150s or Chevy 1500s, you know, your half-ton, perhaps a 3/4 ton type truck with canopy. And they're just basically for non-response utility specialized service application. The Ford Interceptors are identified as staff chief officers, and there would be a fleet rotation that would coincide with that to identify which vehicles, old vehicles could drop out of surplus and others could be moved down for replacement.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rowland.
Explain to me real quick what makes the the Interceptor different than, let's just say a base model like Explorer or whatever they're built on, other than, I know there's a beefier motor in there.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily go for the biggest motor. These Interceptors are probably going to be hybrid versions. I myself drive a Interceptor and it's a hybrid. What makes them very unique is they're called special services vehicles and or police pursuit vehicles. Obviously, we're not the police department, so we lean away from that, but the special services vehicle takes into account a lot of the upfitting on a assembly line side of the house back at Ford. They build in a lot of the upgrades that we would already be doing into these vehicles, such as center consoles, pre-wiring for antennas, different suspension. It's basically built for the fire and police service, and
They have larger alternators too, bigger brake.
larger brakes. Exactly.
Okay.
Um,
Just curious more than anything.
yeah, a lot of the items that we would do aftermarket is done in the production line. They started doing that, I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago. Ford and Chevy followed suit. And I want to say Dodge is doing the same thing now. They all have what's called a special services vehicle.
So all the trucks we have to retrofit, or have to get aftermarket type stuff, but for these Interceptors, we've got a lot of that stuff just kind of built in.
Exactly. And these trucks would also be available as SSV models as well.
Mhm.
However, we don't believe that that application is needed for what they're going to be using them for.
So
So
that's the larger motor and everything else, SSV. Okay.
Commissioner Chan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, you said non-response, but this a deputy chief, is that what you?
yes, sir. Let me clarify that. The Ford F-150s would be more of a support vehicle, deputy fire marshal, for inspections, fire investigation, code enforcement type things with our contract cities or our partner cities. The pursuit intercept vehicles, or the police intercept vehicles, I should call them, those would be response capable and more geared towards that. That's why we lean towards that particular package.
Right.
The other one is more of your standard Ford F-Series type truck.
Okay, because, both, because of weather and stuff like, we want to still able to go on the road.
Mhm.
But at the same time, one time we're looking for civilian type of thing that save money, fuel efficiency and all this stuff. Is that?
And we are building that into the proposal as we are looking to procure the vehicles. The direction that staff has, the assistant chiefs have given me, and I've directed my counterparts and colleagues, is that we would consider hybrid and bring hybrid vehicles into the fleet to address those fuel economies. And
Right.
currently, we do have a handful of hybrids. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say we have 7 or 8 hybrid type vehicles in the fleet right now, as we are trying to do our part to cut emissions.
Right. Are we, what happened to this surplus vehicle? How are we gonna handle this?
The surplus vehicles?
No, they're now being replaced and then those become surplus. And
Yes, so our intention is to go to the old, we have some vehicles that are pushing 20 years. And our intention is to identify, we know what they are. I don't have that information in
Right,
front of me. And we want to drop those out of the bottom end and bring before you a surplus resolution for consideration at a future meeting. We're not prepared yet.
Yeah.
But I want to say,
Historically, Commissioner Chan, they go to auction.
they're
Oh,
optional.
Typically,
Yeah.
when we surplus them, we bring the paperwork, the
Right.
board surpluses them, and we take into Murphy auction and sell them.
You don't want to see there as a reserve or anything?
No.
Okay.
James and his team will make sure that the rigs we need, he'll keep the rigs we should have in reserve, and the rigs that are where mileage. I mean, we have a couple of those rigs that are got 150 plus miles, 1,000 miles on them. They're coming up on 20 years old.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So his team will ensure that the rigs we currently keep are rigs we should keep. We have a reason for the rigs we don't need, or the rigs that are beyond service life for the RFA will be surplus. And then historically, and I forget, Shane's on, I'm speaking for Shane, that we send him to
Murphy off.
Jim Murphy office.
or to, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernhoff.
Just forgot what I was gonna say. It was so long. I think you and I had this discussion at one time, before there's a state bidding, or state contract come available, cars come available. Is that where our source will be on these, or will it be a different, state acquisitions?
So Commissioner, that is a moving target.
Okay.
And what prompted this agenda bill request was the ordering window opened without our expectation about a week ago for the Ford F-150 pickup trucks. So we're moving with some purpose so that we could take advantage of that. And we don't anticipate that opening again until late in September at the earliest this year.
So if I understand the dynamics correctly, it's like a no notice incident, right? Boom, somebody raises a flag, says you got 5 days to get your equipment, go. So it's our obligation to prime the pump in a manner of speaking and saying, go ahead and get it.
And you see us shifting gears a little bit as to, hey, could we ask for this in advance versus coming to you after the fact and going, gosh, there went that opportunity. But hey, we're early for next time, whenever that might be.
What is that suspense though? That could be what, 9 months to a year?
Well, let's just say what we talked about under item C, the medic units. We did not know that Ford was going to allocate additional Ford chassis to our medic unit builder. It just happened. I got a phone call one day going, hey, are you going to pay this invoice? No, because I didn't know it was coming.
So I think the takeaway here, just like everything else we've talked about, we have prime our folks here to be ready to move at a moment's notice. So
Yes, sir.
I'm very much in favor of making sure that you've got what you need.
We absolutely appreciate the support.
Vice Chair Rowland?
So what type of cargo is fire marshal's service, taking around that requires, these big trucks?
So our fire marshal's office is dual rolled. They conduct not only fire inspections, they also do fire investigation. And that may involve a call out at 2 o'clock in the morning, for instance, and they have all the investigative equipment that would be normally associated with that. Also, they are tasked with evidence collection. And there has to be some consideration with evidence collection. And additionally, their equipment gets soiled or contaminated with the scene of a fire scene. So it's good to keep those items separated from the passenger section of the vehicle in the cargo section of the pickup truck. That's the main reason. And it's very common to see a deputy fire marshal who's dual rolled with investigative responsibilities have a pickup truck or something similar to that. Currently, they're in SUVs, specifically Ford Expeditions that are aged and they're not appropriately sized.
So just one last question, and that is, what is the unnamed battalion chief vehicle?
So right now, staff is evaluating the best application for that. Specifically, our shift battalion chiefs are looking at an evaluation of a Tahoe or a pickup truck. And we haven't identified specifically what their needs are going to be. We know a Tahoe works today, but some of the things that they're anticipating is the future growth of the region, the future growth that involves other aspects, such as what we just talked about under Chief Wells, Sound Transit, and other aspects. So they're reevaluating specifically what a battalion chief's role is and what the best vehicle is for them. So we have it narrowed down to either a Tahoe or a truck. But in anticipation of the order window opening, we thought it would be best if we could just ask for pre-authorization under this replacement schedule.
There's just one that needs to be replaced.
At this time, yes, we have two identified for 2024.
All right, that's all my questions.
I had one. And then it just escaped me.
Would it have changed your mind?
No, it was just more information.
Yeah, good.
MSO 21, that new rig,
Yes, sir.
that is a truck, right?
That is if I'm not mistaken, that is a Tahoe XL, an extended Tahoe similar to a Suburban.
Okay.
Yeah, but a little bit shorter.
Okay, is that the model you're looking at as far as the Tahoe goes?
It could be for sure, yes.
Could be, okay,
Yes. I don't work the battalion anymore and I have to defer that to the team's
not a problem.
recommendation.
One thing I thought was interesting is that being a fire commissioner, I'm always noticing where different fire stations are and trying to look through the window as I'm driving by, like, oh, what do you have over there? And I was driving past one of the Bothell fire stations there off of in Canyon Park. And I noticed that their battalion chief drives in a truck. So
One of the things that we're trying to bring forward and we're getting some really good traction, and as we replace vehicles, we're considering one brand to make it easier for supply and parts and dealership interaction. So we've identified Ford as our preferred manufacturer. However, sometimes you can't get that particular vehicle in the right setup. And that's why you've heard us talk and request a Tahoe in the past, is because it is slightly larger. But typically we're going to be asking for Ford products for ease of our shop and supply, keeping some, instead of waiting months for an alternator, we can supply an alternator on the shelf and have it in supply there. So that's the reason for that.
As long as that acronym from my youth doesn't come to haunt us, fix a repair daily.
I do remember that.
I had a Ford Explorer, so I know.
all right, with that being said, Chair, I'd like to entertain a motion to for approval to sign contracts for the 11 vehicles listed for up to 815,000.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Rowland, seconded by Commissioner Pernahoff. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna second, but that guy beat me to it again.
You can do the next one.
Next time. All right. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, motion carries. And it's 8:26 and we're gonna take a 15-minute water break. So we'll come back at 8:41 to get into new business. Back from our water break and we'll go ahead and get our new business. Or rather the boardroom technology update on it. All right, third time's a charm. So we'll go ahead and continue with the boardroom technology update for discussion with IT manager Chris Groenveld.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Bringing this item back to or in front of you all at the request of Chief Hovis and Chair Daniels. Specifically regarding this room and the age and condition of the equipment that's in here as far as technology goes. I don't know the exact age of the room equipment that's in here, but the equipment that's in here was set up for very specific purposes. And that was back in the time when everybody was here in person. There was really no such thing as hybrid meetings. All of the equipment that's in here is past what I would say is its normal life expectancy. It's all mostly analog equipment with some digital converters that have been put in to try and kind of hobble it along as we went here. The equipment that is actually being used right now for our meeting tonight was something that staff kind of put together to try and get us back in the room and get a hybrid meeting set up in a temporary solution, but it was never meant to be a long-term solution. And At this point, it kind of makes the room useful in one specific purpose for this setup that we have here. If anything else is to happen in this room, everything has to be taken apart, put away, moved around to fit whatever the needs of the room are. It's just not very practical. In addition to that, things are falling apart. The speakers that are actually in this room we can't use right now. Primarily, it does not work. The equipment that we have in there would take a lot of work to get it to actually integrate in with using Zoom and being able to have audio come through the actual room. There's just a lot of stuff. The projection screens that are not actually down right now are pretty much unusable at this point. They're falling apart, they're disintegrating. If you do have the projector on, you can't really clearly see what's actually on the screens. So what we've done is kind of gone out to 3 different vendors, talked about different things that we can do in this room, with the understanding that there may be other changes to this room at some point to potentially expand up here, which is not being considered at this particular point in time. And to just try and make this room more user-friendly, to come in, just be able to start a meeting, basically have automatic, like a panel on the wall, basically where you have 3 or 4 different room setups. You pick which setup you want. It automatically turns on whatever equipment it is. Replacing the current 1 camera that's sitting in the back of the room here with probably 3 to 4 other PTZ cameras, which would be able to zoom in on whoever is actually speaking in the room. Replacing all of the actual microphones that are in the room with, instead of having wired mics, wireless mics, specifically for the board meeting setup. But there's also technology now where you can actually embed mics into the ceiling to pick up more on the, like a training session or a participation where there might be a lecturer, but there may also be people participating. Oftentimes there's meetings now that happen where, you know, if people are on shift or not able to get in for whatever reason or another, it's nice to be able to have that hybrid meeting type setup, which we're trying to kind of get implemented in other rooms in the organization as well. So right now we've been talking to vendors about essentially getting away from projectors and projection screens and moving to large format TVs. A lot less maintenance. They're a lot cheaper than getting the giant projection screens. If I remember correctly, these size screens are probably somewhere in the realm of like $8,000 to $10,000 where these are. And the projectors, I can't even remember how much those are, but yeah. So combine that where you're looking at a big TV, you're probably talking $2,000 to $3,000 maybe. And the current idea on that is not to repurpose the TVs that are in the room up above us right now, but to move them strategically around the room where they're a bit more able to be used in different room setups. And then right now to have 2 large format TVs on carts that would be placed in various areas in the room, depending upon the actual setup of the room. I kind of already mentioned the cameras, replacing the one in the back with 3 to 4. The systems that all of the vendors were proposing are able to be set up where, especially in the situation where right now we have, you know, somebody will have a specific mic assigned to them. They'll be sitting in this seat. If that mic goes live, the camera will automatically focus in on them. So it's just a lot less management on that perspective. The ceiling mics are also capable of being directionally configured. So if it hears a voice coming from that section of the room, it can focus in on a section, maybe not zoom completely in on somebody, but at least pick up where somebody is sitting. The whole idea of it is to make it actually usable where IT doesn't have to necessarily be involved in every single meeting that goes on in the room. And, you know, a user can just say, hey, I got to go have a meeting. Let's go sit in there, hit the button and start it up. What else? It'll get everything up to just a full digital audio and video situation. And all touch control, all that kind of stuff. Lots of different things involved. The quotes that I've been getting, these are all kind of rough for budgeting. There's definitely adjustments that would have to be made to actually finalize something for approval. But we're looking at somewhere in the realm, the 3 quotes, the lowest was about $105,000. The highest was up pushing about $150,000. I put 146 in here, but at this point, a couple of those quotes are a couple months old. Things change very quickly and prices go up. We're also dealing with a lot of the same things with supply chain issues. At this point, we don't know when some of that equipment is going to go, which is why we're coming now. It could take months before we even see something, or maybe it'll happen faster, but the main point was just to kind of get up what we're attempting to do with the room, not just replacing like for like, but changing a couple things to try and reduce the cost and make the room more usable in different circumstances. And also, like I was saying, the solutions that we're looking to do would also be able to be incorporated if we were to move back to the front of the room as well without having to go and move all the equipment. It's more of a configuration change where you have to program the cameras to look over there instead of out here. So at this point, we're just kind of looking to have some discussion about it to see where everybody kind of sits on the needs of the room. And then the hope is, depending upon how that goes, to be able to select a vendor. One of the 3 vendors is actually on the approved list of on the state contract. So more than likely, that's kind of where we're looking, but just to actually go finalize something to bring back for consideration. That was a lot of talking, sorry, but hopefully it was informative.
Thank you. It was for me. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yes, hey, Chris, very good. Yes, totally understood. Now, so I guess we're planning on keeping this headquarters building for a long time, but if for something happened, this is, it's all gonna be wireless, so everything's transferable pretty much, pretty easily to another location.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely would be obviously install costs and wiring that has to be done. But for the most part, all the equipment that we're looking to purchase could be transferred to another room or another space.
Okay, and whatever you do, whatever it is, the mics, this is the second set of mics, they're always a problem. So something that actually works so that commissioners don't start talking for 5 seconds and everybody has to tell them, you know, turn on your mic. Something that's obvious, maybe like that squirts water at the commissioner's face, something slaps them on the head or something that works. So we don't.
All right.
So the mic's very important that they're commissioner friendly and they actually work. And
Want to be able to eat it, to see the red light.
There you
well, it's something, yeah, something that's just a little bit more obvious that you got to press the darn button to speak or something, whatever. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate you. A long time coming. I think we should do that. But I don't know, we have the, Melissa, we have the program, what program we're supposed to have, the software for the meeting?
Granicus.
Granted? Yeah, I'm not so probably, that should be integrate with the system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely. I did have it on the checklist. Sorry, I was trying not to read from it, but that is
Right.
one thing that's considered as well. It's basically just another output to that system so that it can record it and integrate with that as well. So it is
Right.
being considered in there as well.
Yeah, at one time, Snow 911 is a big organization. They actually meet here. They like it because the spaces we have.
Mhm.
So I'm also, yeah, I completely agree. This is supposed to be a training program too. So that's critical. And I have visited many of the city hall of the city. They have all really unique equipment that, yeah, we're complete. We need update. I completely support you.
Commissioner Furnoff.
Yeah, when you actually get your vendors selected, I'd like to know who they are. I was part of the $1.2 million technology upgrade for the city of Seattle DOC. And I know that sometimes there will be specifications that a vendor will supply that are industrial monitors, industrial this and industrial that. And sometimes it's a little overkill for our particular needs because we're intermittent and we don't run 24/7 situational awareness displays that each cost $4,000 or something along those lines. So we'll want to just kind of keep an eye on what the vendor decides is best for us in that vein, because sometimes it can be inflated.
Sure.
Commissioner Vice Chair Roland, and then I think Commissioner Lawrence, you had your hand up.
I know we have this whiteboard that I don't think I've ever seen really used, or we think maybe we used it once or twice, and just a thought in the process. I don't know what the cost differential between them, but being able to use one of the video displays as a whiteboard, kind of Kornacki type style. Or, I don't know what the prices are. If that would be something that you think would be advantageous, but could be a good time to look at that as long as we're putting up displays. Just a thought.
Chief Eastman, you look like you were about to say something.
I was just gonna say, Chris, the infrastructure for this building is 07. So outside updating the projectors and the camera came later, new TVs, but the hardware, the wiring, the speakers, the projector screens to come down and all that was part of, I mean, that's 07 vintage. So it's been here a long time.
They don't last forever, unfortunately.
Chief Maxwell.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this, and I was part of that original design, this is actually our largest training room in the whole fire authority. And there would be a lot of utility in being able to hold classrooms here again, because even the one at Station 15, it's standing room only just for continuing education for our paramedics. And so the educational component is greatly needed as well. And when we have storms or we activate as an emergency team, we use this room as well. So there's multiple utilities and needs for this. So thank you.
You said largest in the RFA. I'm curious about the county for training. Is this among the larger rooms? With regards to other
It
parts
was
of
when we built it, we were quite popular. I don't know.
Okay.
As far as fire departments go?
Yeah.
Chair, yeah, this is the largest.
Okay.
We've kind of been the go-to. Snow 901's new building, when that's done with the tenant improvement, will be the largest, I think, training facility though in the county.
Okay.
For emergency services.
All right. Thank you. You made that statement, so it got me curious.
Yeah,
Thank
we held a lot of training in this room. And yeah, it's very useful to educating our providers and our firefighters.
Thank you.
It's also our fire operations command post too, or center through COVID. And then for, when we kind of try to spin up our own FOC instead of an EOC too. So
That's all I was gonna say
Yep.
is whatever this plan is, really should first and foremost reflect operations. And then support the next layer of whether it's community meetings or whatever, because if you're turning it into an FOC, you may need, additional Wi-Fi drops and all sorts of things that communicate with your technology as it is. So I would encourage that. Sorry, Chair.
FOC.
Yeah.
Field operations.
Or fire operations center, but I can't even count how many times we've used this for storms, for emergencies. So
Thank you.
Just want to get the alphabet soup out.
Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like we're ever gonna use that dais again. Is that what that call behind you?
Yes.
That takes up a lot of room. Why don't we get rid of that? And make it the multi-purpose room that we're kind of using it for? Because look at us, we're not, nobody's up there, haven't been up there for a long time. So is that part of the plan, Chris, to remove that?
No,
I'm not touching the desks or anything in the room. I'm primarily just looking at the technology, but I know there have been talks about things with that in the past. So
Yeah, well,
be the-
the chief, everybody else would probably say that having more room, and make that a bigger room. I mean, take that out as a bigger room.
well,
Right.
no, we have to be
Commissioner Chan.
careful because there's a lot of ceremony things and we're up there. We use a lot before the COVID. So we got a little consideration to that because a lot of time when your presentation, whatever, we need to be sit up there. So.
That, and then we also have to be cognizant of the two liaisons coming on board for Mount Lake Terrace and Briar. And
Well, I'd
eventually.
like to have a
liaison
staff
pod meetings.
recommendation of what to do, how much usable that space, how much more usable that room would be, because we're just here maybe 3 nights a month. And I can't think of any reason, if we're not going to be doing it now, we're not going to be doing it at board meetings in the future, to have it sitting there for the occasional ceremony. That doesn't make too much logic to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Vice Chair Rowland.
I'm just gonna remind that I'm kind of out of scope of what we're talking about here. Though we definitely want to discuss it later. So for these three quotes, that we've already got, are they all equivalent? Is there a difference between the, basically, what is the difference in the price points? Is it different equipment, or is it just different businesses with different reputations having different rate, different estimates?
Yeah, there definitely are. Obviously, different vendors are going to work with, they'll work with different vendors. So a lot of the equipment does match up, but there are variants in it. I did not go back to them and I didn't spend a bunch more time having them, you know, hey, can we swap this out? I wanted to see what kind of support and where we wanted to go first before we started having a bunch of changes done. But for the most part, the end result is pretty much the same. There's definitely fluctuation in labor costs as well, which is always a, you know, on the higher boat. So,
And is the intent of the hardware pieces of this to be kind of, or I guess the hardware to be, you know, service and software agnostic, like, you know, it's not Zoom optimized so that, you know, if we go to something else, now we've got to replace the little panels on the wall or things like that. Is that what we're looking at, or is there a thought behind that?
yeah, the current plan was not to, I think there are benefits to making it where it's either a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams type of room. But the current plan was to make it where it's a computer running and you could use any video conferencing software that you have on that computer with it. It just delivers all of the equipment, the sound, the cameras, all as just a USB attachment to the computer. So it doesn't really matter. You could add another computer where you say, hey, this is the Zoom computer, this is the Teams computer. There's a lot you can do with it. So we'll definitely be working with the vendor to figure out what their best recommendation is. Most of them did say to either standardize on Zoom or Teams. But there are ways to get around that and to be able to use whatever you want as well.
Thank you.
There's a new item, a separate topic. So we got to get there.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the primary should interested is the FOC, and then everything else layered on after that.
Okay.
So that would, I think that's the direction that the board.
Yeah, I just want, have you visited all the city council around here?
I have been to a couple of them.
Yeah.
But there, depending, all three of the vendors have said, hey, we can set up a time to go and see something that we put in.
Right.
But it'd be best to try and kind of narrow in on one of those.
I
before we start.
I think the Monterey was the newest one. So that you might have this, because I'm very impressed, all of them, they're much more prepared.
For sure.
And talk about a diode, everyone have that.
Yep.
But I'm not sure this, just like the order of church, you only use once, few hours a week, but it is important to have that, yeah. All right.
Field trip might be a good idea to see how other bodies like this are doing it with the DS and, you know, layouts and all that stuff, because I found different approaches very interesting. So that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We talked about the 3Ms, Mill Creek, Mount Lake Terrace, and Mukilteo as city council chambers that we've looked at that have, you know, done renovations or updates and navigated pre and post pandemic fairly well. So we figured that'd be a good starting point if we're getting head nods for the board from the board on this to bring it back.
That works. Thank you. Cool. Then don't go anywhere, because now you're on for new business with the IT infrastructure move and internet upgrade for discussion.
Okay. So this is, I'll try and keep this as short and simple as possible. So with the new server equipment that we just ordered 3 weeks ago, that was approved and that kind of stuff, we've kind of been evaluating all of our services and all of our vendors that we're currently utilizing and trying to just plan for the future. So the first part of this is actually for discussion at this point, but our intent is to bring that back for consideration to actually sign, is an ILA with the Snohomish County Data Center to move our current server infrastructure from the Linwood Data Center that we're currently using out to the actual Snohomish County Data Center in Everett. There are a number of other agencies that are already hosting their equipment there. The primary reason for it is going to be that we are also working through and trying to get our new station alerting like how calls actually come in and broadcast over the actual stations implemented, which is all done over the internet, over IP protocol and things like that, instead of radio frequencies, which are currently used and are basically obsolete at this point. They're not really updating them. They're not supporting them. So we do need to move towards that technology. Moving our equipment to the Snohomish County Data Center, Snow 911 already has their setup there for direct connection back to the alerting system. So it puts us in that system and makes it a lot easier to manage the connections for the actual alerts going through. It also does save us a bit of money. They're not really in it to make a profit. So they're essentially charging us what it's being charged plus a little something just because they have the actual stuff there. So let me pull back up. I should have been following along in here. Sorry. So what we're looking at is signing a 5-year agreement with them. It's going to save us about $10,000 a year in hosting costs. The first year, there is an additional $2,000 just because they need to install an additional connection panel so that we can have links from all of our stations coming into the actual data center. But after that, it is going to save us about $10,000 a year. So there is a savings, plus it gets us closer to Snow 911. I think it's kind of a good thing to do at this point, and it's the perfect opportunity to do it with the new equipment that we just purchased. The plan would be to install that equipment in there and set up a link between the two data centers to do kind of more of a live migration to try and limit downtime on current systems. So that's the first part of this. The second part of it is, I believe this was something that had already been started actually several years ago, and then the pandemic hit. But it would be installing dark fiber services between all of our stations. And at this point, if we go forward with the ILA to the county data center, it gives us a more robust and more secure connection from each of the actual stations to that, primarily for alerting, but also to be able to provide more security. The purpose of dark fiber is essentially it does not have, it's a private fiber line that uses the backbone of different providers where you have a dedicated line that gets you from point A to point B. So it doesn't have internet connectivity on the actual line. So what it allows us to do is essentially secure the data center and not have to worry about outside influences on the actual fire stations themselves. So it does improve that. With that, obviously does come a bit more cost than our standard services that we're currently using, which is Comcast cable. We've had numerous problems already with Comcast where they just decide to either do planned maintenance, or the better is, hey, a station goes down and they don't tell us about it until later, which right now doesn't really affect us too much other than internet's down at the station, but at least alerting is still coming over radio. When we talk about going over IP-based routing and alerting, it's a lot more critical to do. So that's what we're looking to do, is moving or implementing dark fiber services that we already actually have at three stations currently plus headquarters. We'll be moving those from the current data center out to the county data center, but we've kind of already been testing it. It's been working. At this point, our plan is not to necessarily replace Comcast, although our Comcast contract is up for renewal next year. So it's an opportune time to start thinking about putting it in, because each of these stations, they're each going to have different timelines on how long it's going to take to get it implemented. There's construction costs and things like that, that the vendor that we're looking at, which is Astound, I think that's how they say it. They basically are with the 7-year contract that they have, so 72-month contract, they've gotten the price per station down to the same. It's $570 a month per station, plus tax, because it is actually a private line and it's not an internet circuit. They've absorbed all those construction costs for all the stations with the 72-month contract, but that's why it's a longer contract. What's that? Mhm. Yeah. I do need to add one thing in there, which I did note in here, which it is excluding currently station 12, which apparently is far outside of where their current lines are. So there is a large cost enabled, and it would have thrown off the entire contract. And I did not want to hold up all stations waiting for the one. So at a later time, we will be having to plan for what we're going to do with that. I'll be looking into other vendors besides Comcast to see if we can get something that's more reliable. But staff's recommendation is to move forward with both of these things, doing the dark fiber. Overall, based upon the budgeting that we currently have in, it's actually going to only be about $55,000 annually increase from what's currently budgeted. Because we did have the budget to add to a couple of stations this year. And we have worked out with the vendor where they will allow us to do half the stations this year, half the stations next year. So we don't need to do a budget increase this year. However, we do need to expect that it will be more in 2024 by about $55,000. Happy to take any questions. Hopefully that all makes sense.
Real quick, Chief Eastman, it looked like you had some things to add to what.
Well,
the proposal.
we looked at this, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, and it was like $800,000 to get the stations we had at the time hooked up to fiber. So far better deal to have the conductivity that we're talking about now. And I guess I will add, as we move to locution, which is in the budget, we have $1.6 million budgeted for at least the RFA stations. The reality is that, I guess I'll add on to what Chris is saying, is we have to have reliable internet, because that's how we're going to alert our crews in the very near future, or at least connectivity with the dispatch, because that's how we're going to get notified. The current way we get notified is through radio, through capcos. It's old technology. We thought it was going to be maintained. It's not maintained anymore. And if it breaks, we in the RFA, except for station 76, I think right now, we'll be listening to a radio. And so James has been working with the vendor to get locution going, to get locution installed. What Chris is talking about ensures that we have reliable connection so our crews can get alerted when they need to go and respond on a call. There's a lot of other things that you get benefits from, but as we move forward to putting locution in play, becoming IP based for how our stations get alerted, having not what Comcast is doing is go down and nobody knows they went down. That potentially is catastrophic for what we do, without having some form of redundancy anyway. And so I'm actually really excited of the work that's been done. I didn't realize you were that far. And it dovetails nicely into where we have to go anyway for alerting crews. And so just so you know, they are connected. And we need to coordinate to make sure that the stations we're running online with locution, we have the fiber to go along with it. So I wanted to add that it does affect the basis of how we get alerted to go on a call. So it's actually really important.
And I will add even to that yes, we already have locution at station 76, which we acquired. We've already had problems because they only have Comcast there, and District 7 had already had issues with it as well. We have had a couple of issues already as well. So it definitely is a real problem. So that's why we're looking at it. And station 76 is at the top of the list to do that. And I am working with DC Curtis as well to coordinate locution stations versus which fiber stations we put online first.
So it sounds like the IoT or Internet of Things is the path forward, and that the radio basically is been sunsetted and not really communicated that it's been sunsetted.
I don't know if it's been communicated or not, but it definitely is on its last leg.
So to be fair, a year ago, when we had this conversation during, I can't remember exactly when it was. I know there was thought that they found a solution to maintain the gateway and the current station alerting through the radio, cap codes, the radio system, that bought us more time. And as it turns out, and I want to say we figured that out last June, that actually solution doesn't exist, or was not a viable solution. And so we were back to the place we were, which is why during the budget process, we added locution as an ask for at least the RFA owned stations, because of the risk we're at now with the current way we get alerted and there will be a point in time where if they have a problem, they may not be able to fix it. And so that happened in June or July, and we incorporated that in the budget, which was, you know, we got the dollars needed to get locution in play. That's in progress. And this works in with it. If that helps a little bit of the timeline, because I think for commissioners that have been on for a couple of years, we did talk about, we thought we were having a problem. Looks like they have a solution. We came back a few months later and said that solution is not going to work, just to give everybody the timeline.
All right, last question. For Snohomish County is concerned, how many other fire departments are using the radio instead of locution and IoT? Or are we the last ones?
I don't know if I could tell you. I know there's a whole lot of agencies that have gone to locution. I don't know. I can't answer that question about
Okay.
who's using cap codes and pagers to do that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Farrenhoff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, a few questions for you, Chris. First off, I get the Comcast issue, having run FEMA's bunker up on 228th and having my entire operations center go down because some guy with a backhoe on 228th that was digging up the trench took out my entire center in one foul swoop. Yeah, it's an Achilles heel, so I side with you on that. Can you give me a little better description or understanding what dark fiber is? I feel like it's like the Empire from Star Wars, but
Yeah. I don't know why they actually use the actual term, but essentially it's it's essentially the equivalent of us running a line of fiber from this building to wherever we're going.
okay,
It's
dedicated.
It's dedicated
Is it
to
hardened?
us. I'm sorry, what's that?
Is it hardened? In other words, is it like we used to have
Commissioner
specific?
Farrenhoff.
If I may, I can probably explain this to you very easily. Back in probably about 2001 is the first time I remember a company called Level 3. They're one of the big players, would go in and pretty much dig trenches in these areas that were not developed yet, or even in big cities, they'd find areas where they could get right away, dig trenches, put in pipes, and their thing was the pipes were just empty. They didn't even put fiber optic cables through them, and they had a carriage system. They could rapidly run a cable if they needed to run it down. What dark fiber is pretty much pre-laid fiber runs, because it's pretty cheap. Once you get everything installed, you put 1,000 strands of fiber down these pipes, and then as you need them, they're dark. They're literally, there's no light going through, there's no signals, and it's just there for if somebody needs service. Now they can plug in, and you've got a point-to-point connection when it comes to your data transfer. So it's fast, but it's also secure because you're just dealing with light, nobody can get in between it. I have other questions and concerns, but I will wait because I just wanted to explain that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
they do all sorts of magical things these days.
Yeah.
I know that we had something called a hardened AT&T line that ran to Federal Center. And there was a dedicated circuit that connected warning points across the country. So there are differentiations between civilian and utility, those that are designated for public safety reasons. So I'm just wondering, are we, is any of this really dedicated to technology for that particular sector, public safety, or are we on a commercial grade along with the regular building down the street? Do we have anything are we special or not?
Well, I will say that it's a business level agreement, so they do support their services. As far as if it's dedicated for the public service, I don't think so. They do have
Public safety.
sorry, it's not dedicated just for public safety, but I do know that there are a lot of other public agencies that are using similar services. And even through the same vendor as well.
Is this a Stown that we're talking about?
Used to be Wave. They have a bunch of different names on their invoice. It was a big
I personally know a technician who knows these systems very intimately and has questioned their capabilities. Their contracts probably look amazing, but talk to other users is what would be my advice, and ask for satisfaction plus or minus. It could be that we'll discover something in the weeds that suggests that maybe they're not as robust here, or maybe they are the most robust here, but they're not robust over there. I don't know how that might play out.
Yeah.
And just one other question, because it's just something that we had explored at the federal level, as we installed something called Cradle Points, which had 4 SIM cards that allowed us to roll over to cellular data as backup in case our landline went down, right? So we had at least 3 points of redundancy, and then we could go through K-band and pull internet off satellite. So I'm just curious if we looked at any of those kinds of options that may be part of the whack, so to speak.
It is on the list to do. We needed to get kind of a primary thing in place first,
Yeah.
but that is something I'm definitely considering to replace a redundant connection with Comcast or
I
something.
might be using old terms and old technology, so I apologize. I don't turn to you as a subject matter expert, but I think just in my example, you get what I'm saying is that there are ways to have rollover, fallover backups that are fairly inexpensive, really.
Yeah.
I think our cradle point was less than $1,000 and it had 4 SIM cards in it and could pull cellular data from, lots of different providers all at once that would feed your router. So I forget if it was 25 or 50 connection points that are provided from that. It's good enough to run it like a FOC or something.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Furnahoff. Commissioner Lawrence and then Vice Chair Rowland.
Yeah, Commissioner Fernahoff touched on what I was going to ask is, cell phones or landlines, a backup to the radios and the dark of the internet.
I'm sorry. What was it? What was the question?
So I've heard, radios and internet were dispatched to contact
Mhm.
the stations or headquarters or whatever. Cell phones or landline telephone lines is a backup to if all else fails.
So, yes, I know that they have they have radios that are provided by Snow 911 that they can use. This is specifically for, station alerting. So if it's late at night and people are asleep and things like that, this is the alerts that go off in the actual station. But yes, there are numerous ways that alerts can come in and do come in. But this is the primary way that that crews are alerted when they're in the station.
Right now, yeah, I got that. If those failed, because Comcast was down, because we don't have dark wire yet.
Yep.
And radios, do the radios to signal the alarm at the station, the alert?
The radio doesn't necessarily signal an alert at the station. The radio would signal whoever's holding the radio.
And they have to be awake to hear it.
Yeah, they would have to have the radio on their person to
When
hear
they-
it.
They can, so it's when they're all sleeping, what wakes them up?
That would be the station alerting, I believe.
So
Just-
the cell phone backup wouldn't work. Landline backups wouldn't work. It has to be this computer internet thing.
Oh,
Yeah, if the station alerting system, Commissioner Lawrence's chief office, if the station alerting system went down or say there was a failure that dispatch knows about, they could do a ring down either with a landline or a cell phone to the fire stations and notify the captain of the station about the failure or that there was a call that was needed to be dispatched, or we can also use texting as another alternative. We have a program on our phones too. We can communicate with active 911 with dispatch. It's just very person intensive, especially when we're talking about, hundreds of calls coming into dispatch and, if it's a system wide.
If the thing fails, there's a way to wake somebody up.
There is. There definitely is. There definitely is.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rowland.
I would like to meet with you offline to understand this a little bit more from an architectural standpoint, and what the resiliency built in is intended, especially in the context of a large emergency, the Cascadia fault, we always talk about. I also have some small, I do have concerns. If I understand this correctly, this is point to point to the data center, and the data center goes out to the internet.
yeah, we would be getting internet through the county data center. Yes.
And so effectively, it's single point of failure for each of the stations in the data, the line itself, or the routing equipment that it connects to at the data center. So depending on how that's all apportioned out, if you lose one router, you could lose contact to all 16 stations. Whereas, the current Comcast, you lose a central office and you're fine, it's only one station affected. So I do have some concerns with the current plan. I also think that looking into making sure that every station, or we figure out a way that we've got a dual redundancy built in, whether that's some sort of mesh topology or something like that, where if one of those lines goes down, the stations can relay off of the nearby station and still get in. Things like that, I think should be in this design, because if there's an earthquake or something that takes down that data center, and we are relying purely on, the fiber for call outs, we don't have radio anymore, because radio doesn't fail unless the transmitter fails, and that's they've got multiple transmitters for that, but we're not building the same kind of philosophy into our IT design for this problem as the old systems had, and not having those corollaries leaves us open to some risk. So what we could talk more about it. I don't want to get too much again in day-to-day operations, but this is really making sure that if we're going that route, that we're doing it. It may cost more to do it right, so we have that redundancy, but I want to make sure that we understand what that is.
Sure.
Commissioner Kenny, you have your hand up. Thank you for waiting patiently.
Yeah, Chris, why leave Digital Fortress Data Center in Linwood and go to the Snohomish County Data Center?
The main reason is to essentially eliminate a hop. So right now, in order to get alerting for locution from Snow 911, we essentially have to have a piece of hardware in the Snohomish County Data Center. So essentially we would have all of our stations connecting to Linwood, then having a connection from Linwood to the Snohomish County Data Center to then get to Snow 911. So since we would already have to have a piece of hardware to manage that connection in the Snohomish County Data Center, I figured it made sense just to move all of the hardware and eliminate that additional hop and go directly to the Snohomish County Data Center.
So it's really about being close to Snow 911.
Basically, that's a big part of this particular solution. If it wasn't for station alerting, there could be other options out there, but we do need to have that connection to Snow 911, and we need it to be as reliable and robust as possible.
So the Snohomish County Data Center, does Snohomish County actually put enough money into it and keep it up? I have not heard of Snohomish County being on the cutting edge of data. So I was just curious, are they, the Snohomish County government itself seems to be chronically underfunded, but maybe they treat their data center better. Is this going to be reliable?
I have talked to the IT. I don't actually know what his title is over at District 7. They currently actually have their equipment in the data center out there as well. And he said he's been actually pretty happy with the service out there. Reliability has been pretty good. They have had a couple of service issues with their connections to the data center, but that was primarily more on the stations that don't have the actual dark fiber solution because it wasn't available in the area that station was in. So I have talked to them. I could definitely reach out and see if I can get some other individuals that are in the data center. I have had conversations with, sorry, I had already put this away. The actual person I've been talking with over there, I'm sorry, I don't have it actually in front of me, but I've had conversations with the actual, I think he's actually the IT manager over at the data center as well. And it sounds like they have quite a few other entities that are in there. I can try and find out exactly who else that is and see if I can get feedback from them as well. But the feedback that I have gotten has been good and they've been happy with it.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, just a couple of maybe stories. I don't know. We at the Emergency Operations Center also had something called POTS lines. Are you familiar with that? It's plain old telephone.
Yeah.
And when our VoIP system, when our computer network crashed, so did all of our phones. and we had to fall back onto, can't get them anymore. Okay,
Pretty much.
so that's a, so you're telling me I'm old enough to remember what a plain old telephone line is. Okay,
To let you know, all of our fire stations that have alarms
yeah,
used to have POTS lines for them.
right.
And we had our fax lines for emergency communications,
Mhm.
and the POTS lines went away and we had to move everything to cable, VoIP. And they changed it so we could run our fire systems through VoIP, which was never the case. So those, unless you're really, really special, you cannot get old traditional copper lines anymore.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you. On to committee updates. Finance Committee with Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll talk about, we're gonna review the 2022 annual financial report. And also we start kind of looking at the primary cost service.
All right, thank you. Intergovernmental with Commissioner Furnoff.
We have not met, no update. Significant.
Thank you.
And Chair Chair of the Intergovernmental will be requesting a meeting through Melissa Blankenship to facilitate within the next 2-week period. Thank you.
And for Snow 911, I had asked Melissa to email out the link to the annual report. So you each should have had an opportunity to see that last week. And that is all that I have for that one. On to Commissioner comments. Vice Chair Rowland and then Commissioner Chan.
Just one thing I wanted to share with staff. I talked to DC Curtis about, I didn't even understand the complexities of fire suppression in the age of the electric vehicle and how batteries that are on fire can burn for days and days and days and are really hard to put out. Went down kind of a YouTube rabbit hole looking at all the different solutions out there. And I asked him if we had anything in particular that we used for that. I still would like to kind of understand what our current posture is, but I mentioned to him a system out there. I didn't have the name at the time. It's a company called Rosenbauer that has a system. It's kind of like think of it as Ghostbusters meets hypodermic needle or something like that. You slide it's a unit that gets slid underneath the battery pack of the car that's hooked up to your hose system and punches a hole into the battery system and then allows direct injection of water into the system. It was something that I thought was kind of fascinating, kind of something new. But I can get you more information on it. And I was gonna try to queue up a video to show, but I show it to you later, but it was kind of cool. And it seemed like an interesting solution. The other one was over in Korea, they literally have these barriers that they can bring around that surround the vehicle and slide up, and they pump water into it, and the water kind of fills it like a little kiddie pool around it, so it completely submerges it. Some kind of interesting ways to tackle it. And I didn't know what we are currently doing or if we had looked into other things, but as those become more and more prevalent, I don't think the consumer realizes the challenges you face, but yeah, I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, if you could share that with us, that would be great, with Chief Curtis specifically. And you mentioned Rosenbauer. Rosenbauer has a tour they're doing here in the next week and a half or so. They've got an all electric fire engine that they'll be.
Did not contact me.
No, it's okay because they've got a sales rep. So, and they're,
You do that? I'd like to see it.
yeah, they're doing a demo at Payne Field. They're going to have the rig come through, and that's probably why they really built the technology too for their own apparatus.
Yeah, very cool.
So I'm not saying anything negative about Rosenbauer either. I'm just saying it's good to know how to put the fire out in your own fire engine in case it was happening on a tour.
I'll share the little video with you later. It's kind of cool to
Love to
watch.
see it.
I think just pump something just pierces into the unit and then they just start flooding it.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, thank you.
When can you be sure to email Melissa so that she can let us know when that event is occurring there at the Payne Field?
Gosh, yeah, I will. And I believe it's June 18th, but I might be off. So
That's
thank
fine.
you. Okay. Sometimes. So thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, that's right, Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you that the organization I started in called Asian Service Center, and we'll have a great opening on Saturday on waterfront, Edmonds waterfront. We'll anticipate 200 people. It turned out to be 300 plus people, and we got a lot of good news coverage. One thing I want to thank Sub County Fire, Shawnery. He came and did a senior citizens the check, the education about them, and it was a pretty well attended a group of senior citizens. They are still our citizens. They are respond for them. And one thing, we have prevention, right? We talk prevention. So this group of people never get the education because the English language is limited. So in Chinese, so we're also going to do Vietnamese and other languages. We have our board of directors from all Pakistanians and Bangladesh and India. And so it is truly a breakthrough, regardless of who they are, but we want to get our prevention to all the people. So that's great. Another thing is that Quill Park, they're going to have a first appreciation of a first respondent. They have all over the Puget Sound. They have one in near Station 10, right? Yeah. Did they give you an invitation? And
Quail Park, yeah, we had, there's been 2 ice cream socials in the last few months, and they'll do an annual first responder appreciation, which usually ends up with a barbecue inside it. Yeah. So
they basically appreciate you guys very much. And hopefully you can get a Pope person there, Station 10, whatever you've sworn Pope.
definitely, yeah, that's what happens. They're in contact with our communications director Hines or Shawnery. And we set things up so the crew will come out of service. So it's located by Station 10 and then also Station 15 and 23. We'll try to cycle people through.
Right.
Last time I was there with Leslie and one of our acting battalion chiefs, Terry Fitzgerald, myself, and Station 10's crew. It was a good event.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys do a really good job in PR thing, and so they really appreciate you guys.
Well, you can throw a rock over the fence and hit the fire station. It takes 5 minutes to drive around the block to get there, but yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners? All right, Melissa, do you have a video queued up?
I just emailed her. It's a little 40 seconds.
Turn your mic on.
Little demonstration. I think it does. I don't know if it's working, but a little, yeah. So take the little device there and. Kind of a cool thing.
Thank you for sharing. All right, we are going to go into executive session, collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 42.30.14 sub B or sub 4 sub B with no action to be taken. And we'll go ahead and start off for 20 minutes.
The executive session has been extended for 7 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 5 minutes.
It's 10:05, meeting is adjourned.
Good.